Rob, I think this might be a good question for you. Do you have any ideas on like what do we do at Learn to really help people tap into that previous background they have in making this career pivot?
Yeah, I mean, there's always something, right? Like that you're drawing from. One of the things I hear from you is that you're used to working tight deadlines and with like complex teams, and maybe managing the occasional prima donna's expectations. Um, right, like those are things that are valuable when dealing with clients, or upper management. And so like understanding that you're gonna know a lot about, like I said before, like software development is a team sport. A lot of people have this like apparently Guerrero's kids mindset of like what being a software developer is. It's like, this person probably looks a lot like me in his mom's basement in the middle of the night with the hood up on the hoodie, right? And it's not like that. That's not what we do. And so there's a lot of team skills that are really important. So reframing your existing experiences, having experience, knowing about working with a diverse team, on tight deadlines, and understanding the way to manage client expectations. Like those things are really important pieces to the sort of software developer background. The other thing is I would assume in your previous career that there are a lot of sort of unmanageable things. Like you don't always know how long it's going to take to process a sound sample, or like how much work is going to go into it. And so talking about your experience with estimation, and being able to like, talk about how you've got some idea of how to express the amount of time an unknown thing might take, that you probably have experience with the 80/20 rule, right? Like at some point you have to call that thing good enough and going, you could theoretically go further, but that might not be the right choice, especially if you're talking about live performances. Like you've got to move it along, right? And so you can't just take infinite amount of time to set something up. So those are the kinds of things that I would bring into the equation in a big way, when you're talking about like what your value is on a team. And here's the bottom line: there are going to be folks that don't get it, right? There are software developers out there with their masters in computer science, right? That think that if you don't have 6 years of formal education in programming, you're not going to be a good software developer. And they only hire interns directly out of UC Irvine, and they don't want to talk to anybody else. Those organizations exist, right? But more and more folks that don't, and there's still this huge cadre of people that never had any kind of formal education, right? Like a lot of software developers in the 90s are self-taught. Early 2000s, there's a lot of self-taught folks out there. And so like they're going to think, oh well, you went to a boot camp, like you're not self-taught. So but more and more this like boot camp approach is becoming the established, it's becoming the majority, right? And the folks that get it really get it. When I talk to other consultancy owners, there's a moment when they realize that I run this software consultancy and I run a code school, and like the light bulb goes off in their heads and they go, "Oh, I see what you're doing there," right? Like that means you get to cherry pick the best talent that comes out of the code school. I'm like, yes, that's something I've thought of, right? Like that is a real thing that really happens, and I'm completely unabashed about it, right? We drive the curriculum at Learn to be useful to Notch 8, right? Now, does that have a nice side effect of meaning that the curriculum at Learn turns out to be useful to the industry as a whole and stays really fresh because we're constantly refining it? Yeah, absolutely. So it's good for the students. And is it secretly extra good for me? Sure, it is, absolutely. And I don't make any like hay about that. Like that's a real thing. So that those people that get it are really going to get it. Is it 100% of everybody? No. But these days it's the majority, right? When we were first starting back in 2015, like hiring bootcamp grads was definitely in the minority of companies. I know that famously the HR folks at Intuit would always be like, well, we don't hire bootcamp grads. We only hire CS grads. And they kept telling me that every time I would talk to them, every time I would talk to them. And then one time I went and talked to them. I'm like, well, there's 6 of them working in your advanced R&D department. Did you guys not get the memo on that? Like, I could tell you their names. And sure enough, that department decided that in order to get the kind of talent that they really needed, that they had to expand their scope. Got special permission from the head of HR to hire the people they actually wanted to hire. And now Intuit more and more is being open to a broader hiring pool, right? Like that experiment was seen to be so successful that it sort of cracked this like ironclad, we only do this kind of approach. So it's changing. Will you probably have run into somebody who says no because of it? Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Rob. And I think what's really cool is coming from Matt, also from Matt and Guerrero, is both of you guys have come from a position of, have that career pivot. You guys have any advice maybe for Austin on how he's kind of, you know, what is the word? Like kind of creating that transition, like framing it for himself. Like, do you have any advice for him? I'll start with Matt, if you don't mind.
I mean, it's Rob nailed it. Is just trying to find what in your past career can apply to the position you're applying to, or like what makes them tick that you have because of your past work. And I can tell you that coming from the airline, it was like everybody was kind of like shutting the door, but like, yeah, no, yeah, no, yeah, no. And it was like, no, like, this is what I bring. I know how to do a tight deadline. I know how to work with a team to make that tight deadline. Because when you've got a plane that needs to live on time, like you've got to do it. And putting that extra mile and expectations and things like that. So it's really trying to extrapolate all your past experience into that job seeking, and it's just tailoring to that company of like, oh, you want something that's tight with deadline or tight with like a team. This is what I did, this is how I can do it, and this is how I can apply this to your company.
Great. And Guerrero, do you have anything that maybe you leverage from your past experiences that have been beneficial to where you are now?
Just those soft skills that Austin was talking about, just own them. And if that's what you can bring at the moment, just like I said, just put it out there, own it. As far as the technical stuff, um, I they tell you this in the boot camp, but you're never gonna know everything just because it's constantly evolving. So as long as you know the basics, I see in a lot of job posts, I see a lot of companies look for potential. So they look for, okay, let me see where you can be in, 1 to 2 years. Um, so that's, another thing I look forward to is also don't be worried too much about the technical stuff. Definitely show them that you have potential. That's probably the biggest thing. And yeah, just owning whatever you're really good at and shining in those areas is always good. I come
Cool. That was really
Yeah, I
helpful.
don't come from
Thanks.
like live audio, but like I said, I produce music, Austin. So like my angle is to help produce music software. So I would love to work for like FL Studios or Splice or something like that down the line. Um, but yeah, the cool thing too is because you have like no matter what background you come from, and I learned this, like any industry has software developers, which is really cool. So like I said, like I'm trying to stay in the music scene. So I've applied to like just like whatever I have in front of me. I have this MPK mini keyboard. Like I went on there and they have job postings for software developers, and the questions they ask are so funny. It's like, oh, who's your favorite artist? This and that. So I mean, it's definitely, like I said, you can definitely find work, software work, coming from your background. But yeah, just owning whatever it is you're good at and whatever you have to offer at the moment.